We've all heard the line that education is key to success. But the question we ask is, how relevant is that education to the realities of the day?
We've had a contention that education is on the other side and reality of life on the other side. So tonight's entrepreneur shares with us why it's important to focus on holistic education if we want to nurture our kids for today and tomorrow's challenges.
I then realized, okay, as much as I loved social work, I don't think I want to retire on social work because I was taking all the problems home. And I would often cry myself to sleep. And I remember thinking, okay, while I'm doing my social work, I will train as a Montessori teacher. And so I trained as a Montessori teacher. Children were still very young, but where there's the will, there's a way. Got my qualifications as a Montessori teacher. And that was with the view of, opening my own school then. This is way back in 2001. In less than a year, we were able to set up this place. Just because the vision was there, not just theoretically, but practically speaking. So when we were looking for investors, it wasn't a difficult thing to find because the conviction is there, the passion is there. So people are like, okay, here you go, what can you do with this? And that's what we're doing. Right now as we speak, we're, that's where we are. So it is doable, it's possible. I think when it comes to academia, a lot of people are so maybe overwhelmed, or maybe they think it's too hard. But as long as you find that passion and that thing that you really want to do and your calling, I guess it comes down to having faith in God and knowing that you're not here by accident, and just find that passion. And then whatever you're reading, you will understand, you will finish earlier. It doesn't become a chore. And it's that sort of understanding for me that has made me think, oh, hang on a minute, if I am able to function and I'm able to achieve a lot of what I've achieved, whether academically or else, then how much more our children? How are we educating our children? Why are we not getting the genius out of these children? Why are they finding school so boring? Why is it, why are we having to persuade them or cajole them or reward them or bribe them to do school when school is supposed to be fun? Montessori calls it learning is play and play is learning. Let's not take it too seriously in terms of making it so complicated. Learning is play and play is learning. And that is the mindset that I am so determined to change and to follow the footsteps of Maria Montessori, whose philosophy we are using. If we can infiltrate a lot of schools or even parents to understand, hey, listen, you don't need to pressurize your children. There's no need for a child at age 12 or 13 to be sitting for exams if they're not ready. Let them learn what they have to learn. Let's stop the cramming and let's understand and master. When they master and understand, then we have the future scientists. Whereas now we have Einstein and then Pythagoras and then this, and then we box them in. Okay, kids, today you're going to learn about Einstein. But Einstein was not good at school, in the regular school. He was left to discover, he was left to explore. And now we have what we have. I hear a story of Thomas Edison, the guy who invented, one of the guys that invented the light bulb. He was expelled from school, right? And a letter was written to say, your child is not good for school, your child is not this. But the mother was smart enough to, reverse it and say, oh, they've excluded you from school because you're smart, because you're clever, because you're this, so I'm going to homeschool you. And today we have the light bulb. So let's get our children back. Let's parents change their mindset in the way we think of education. So the holistic approach needs to be revisited, both at policy level, at parental level, in every aspect if we want a better future. If education means to just memorize and cram and then get a degree, but you don't know as an engineer how to put a light bulb up. I visited a chocolate factory. One of our kids' parents has a chocolate factory. And he said to me, oh, please teachers, he goes, we have university students here who are supposed to be helping us make the chocolates, because I saw on the board that he had percentages. He goes, none of these degree graduates that are working for us know how to work out the percentage to make the chocolates. That's ridiculous. So his one plea was, can you please make sure that when these kids are learning whatever they're learning, whether it's maths, English, teach them things that are relevant. Challenges. My first challenge has been the work ethics of my fellow Ugandans. You know, just to have the grounds here leveled, because it was so trip hazard and everything. They'll come and say it takes 10 days, then it takes a month, and then it's 2 months. We were supposed to have opened in September. And parents would come in and we're like, I'm not ready. Okay, we'll open maybe in October. And then in the end, whenever they'd come in, I'd tell them, do you see the workers here? And they said, yeah. I said, when they decide to finish, because they take the money, they go, then they decide to come back when they want to come back. They answer the phone when they want to answer the phone. And you're just like, this is a joke. My vision from my experiences is to prepare our children for the real world, the future children. You know, let's think 15, 10 years ahead of now.
It is one thing to make the money, and it's another to keep it. And many of us tend to have a challenge in keeping that money.
Because it's 2023, we're dedicated to sharing tips to help you grow with us.
And if you're out there and you want to start a business, the first thing is that every business solves a problem. Every business answers a question. Every business solves an existing challenge in the community. So the question which you need to ask is, what challenges are in my community? If you're in a community where people are walking for 1 kilometer to be able to get clean water, then that means that's a challenge which you can do, and that's the business opportunity you will be able to seize. So after we have said we are dealing with a challenge, the next thing is exactly where do you want to go? Having a clear picture of what you're trying to build, that is critical. So what we call goal setting, it is critical that every entrepreneur answers that question, but also to have the self-confidence to be a leader as a business owner. Business is challenging. Everyone who has run a business will tell you that it is full of ups and sometimes even feels like more downs. Now, what we are saying here is that you have the self-confidence to keep pushing. I think one of the things which is absolutely important is to appreciate that we are living at a time where the world is interconnected. You are no longer living as an individual. You have to walk knowing that even though your business is located somewhere in Serere, it is connected to a business which is located in Russia, a business which is located in China. And if there is a war which happens, it's going to affect you. Now, that acknowledgement business owners have done. However, what is critical, and I think even more important, is to appreciate that your job is to make sure that you kind of deal with those challenges. We have seen the last 3 years have been crazy. COVID-19, inflation, wars and talks of war. But the entrepreneur says, what is in my control and what can I be able to solve? So when the weather is changing, the entrepreneur has a responsibility to say, can I get an umbrella to be able to cover my business and my customers and my employees during this time?
Ugandans are known to be very hospitable people. And for that matter, we also like to have our fun.
Related to that, we enjoy going for music shows, for instance, in the stadiums and other bigger spaces. But have you ever asked, who actually puts together the sound that you get? Today, we find out what takes place and how it's done.
When the events industry started to flourish in Uganda, we were mainly depending on bringing in experts from Nairobi, South Africa, and sometimes even further ashore. I think those who have been around will recall the times that every time we wanted to have a show or anything beyond 3,000 people, we would have to bring in companies like Live Gigs from Nairobi And here you were talking about having professional sound. So at the time, there was no professional, there was no companies that could offer that kind of professional sound. But that has since changed, and it has been because of the investment that different companies have put into this industry. Of course, the pioneer in all this is people like Charlie Lubega of Governor. And prior to that, I had the opportunity to work with Andrew Rugasira of VR, and I think we had the best sound in the land. You know, when we brought in international artists, we would bring in, we would fly in a sound engineer to just manage the equipment that we already had in the country. So that's where we go to work with reputable, world-renowned engineers like Lee Thompson. There's another Robert Watson, I think he was. So those would come in, do their part using the equipment that we had, and you would have a good show. There's a number of people who love sound, it's their passion, and they have invested time and money to learn and skill themselves up. I think the challenge in our industry is the cost of equipment. It's the same equipment that we use here is the same equipment that is used for the Olympics and World Cup and all these international events, whether it's Rihanna or whatever. So the cost of buying that equipment is very high, and when we come, it's not like the taxes are subsidized. So the demand for the right equipment, the demand for the right sound is there. We as event professionals, we try to invest in buying the equipment, but we also need to invest in training our people to manage that equipment, because I'm seated right in front of a camera. It can have all the bells and whistles, but if you don't know how to use it, you only use, you don't use it to its full potential. We don't have really a school dedicated to providing that kind of skilling, and neither do we have the scholarships. So you find that people learn on the job, and you can only do so much if you don't get exposure. Our industry is all about exposure. Our industry has come from and I don't think we should blame it on government, but also us as a society, we have kind of tended to look down upon the people who provide, and not in a disrespectful way. When your son comes up and says he wants to be a DJ, some people have, the wrong perception that, they call it umudongo. They don't look at the music and, those kind of skills as for example, any other profession. I remember, like back in the days, we had someone like Patrick Muyonjo in the industry. Whenever Lucky Dube would be performing in the whole of Southern Africa, he would say, "I want Patrick Muyonjo on my shows." So Patrick would be in Burundi, in Malawi, in whatever. He was an engineer from here. That is, a sound engineer from here, and and things like that. So we want to put ourselves in a position of strength, so that whenever there is an event of that magnitude, we are the reference point, So there is more demand for the skills that we have than there is supply. So you find that a person who was, carrying the wires on this event, on the next day, he thinks or he feels he has the right to be, the one in the equipment. So sometimes you go to events and you listen to the sound and say, no. Here, when we talk about sound engineers, we're talking about people who are providing sound at the highest level. There's nothing that beats exposure. And I remember the number of times we worked on these international events, and again, the names that come to mind, names like, Elvis Sechanzi, Paul Sentongo, Shaka. We would, when you would work on events like, the Shaggies, we worked on Sean Paul, UB40, and all these other events that we did. The guys they come with, when you see the things that they do differently using your own equipment, you are amazed. Because the thing about sound engineering, you are selling something. It's not tangible. You cannot touch and feel it. And so unfortunately, people don't pay the right money for your skills. So while it requires a lot of training, a lot of time, a lot of exposure, you cannot, when we give you an invoice for a wedding, as much as we are prepared for a big show to fly in a sound engineer and pay him up to $10,000, when we do an event here, no one is willing to bill for just the sound engineer. So for them, they would rather bill for equipment, but not for the skill that, you know, that makes that equipment bring out all the bells and whistles. So a young profession, it doesn't look attractive for those who are in the job market, who because it doesn't bring immediate rewards. You do it because it's a passion, and then the passion starts paying you. So you start earning from something that you love.
We've come to the end of this week's edition of Money and Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of our family.
We treasure that and we appreciate it. We'd like to keep the conversation going because business, as we always say, is a going concern. So drop us a line on the other side of your screen. Let's have this going. I've been your host, Charles Boji.
And I'm Shamim K. Matovu.
Good evening and God bless.